as well. And, mom and dad missing Halloween.
Our Director of Regional Stewardship, Ish Herrera, It's going to be followed by a panel of community leaders. Okay. It's going to be really great. And they're here. All right, perfect.
By the way, for the record, we've been back there. They were, we were not as late as it may appear, Lenny.
That's right. We were early.
We were
for the
early.
record.
So, Governor Newsom, thanks for joining us.
Good to be back with you.
Yeah, can you believe this is the 10th Economic Summit, and you were the co-chair from the beginning, and
from the beginning,
come a long ways.
I remember those days, and no, congratulations. And this, I think, what makes this summit unique and special is you're not just dreamers, you're doers. These are the folks on the front line. Each and every one of you are out there every single day doing the hard work. We often talk in politics about what and why, not enough about how. And I think what distinguishes this summit and so many of the leaders in this room is you're on the ground working region by region, focusing on collaboration, focusing on supporting one another, building capacity and partnerships, and that's why I wouldn't want to miss it and didn't miss it this year.
Well, thank you for coming, and before we get into the substance, I have to ask you the question that everybody has been dying to ask you.
Boxers. Sorry.
What were you for Halloween?
Oh, I was a pirate, but I should have gotten an extra large outfit, so it wasn't that impressive. But we all were pirates this year, and it was actually, it's interesting to even ask that question because it does beg some questions that have been asked interestingly to me in the last few days. It's been a hell of a couple years for all of us, for each and every one of you, particularly parents. And I want to speak particularly to the parents out here. The fits and starts at schools, the stresses of balancing your responsibilities at work and also your responsibilities at home. And I'd extend those responsibilities particularly to fathers that may not be doing as much, let's be honest, as the moms have been doing in the last few years. And balancing the responsibilities at home. And, I've been on this damn treadmill. We've gone from crisis to crisis, and from wildfires, extremes, from droughts and social justice and unrest. Obviously with COVID, had this recall you may have read about. And right after that recall, we just jumped right back into it. We had all those bills, 3 weeks of intensity around bill signing, and I signed up to go to Europe. And I was ready to go, and I had that dinner. A lot of you know this dinner with the family. And the kids, literally, they kind of had an intervention. They said they couldn't believe that I was going to miss Halloween. And we got a 5-year-old, oldest is 12, 4 young kids. And I'm defending myself. I got to go, honey, this and that. And my wife was going to go as well. And, mom and dad missing Halloween. For them, it's like worse than Christmas, missing Christmas. And I woke up that next morning with something that's probably familiar to a lot of parents, that knot in your stomach, that I had no damn choice. I had to cancel that trip. And I appreciate it. And so not only did I get that costume, not only did I go trick-or-treating, I enjoyed the weekend. All 4 play soccer at the Boo Fest. Anyone from Sacramento knows what the Boo Fest is, this big soccer tournament. And I was able to bring the kids to work last week. I was in work all week last week, and I have pictures of selfies. I had never done the selfie in front of the bear mask, in front of the governor's office with my kids, and walked up, pro tip, not many people around the Capitol this week, but go up to the pro tem's office. She gives away coloring books to all kids. So I was a Father of the Year for that. And we've been just diving deep into port issues, diving deep into my biggest anxiety, which is the winter surge. Focus on that. Issues of vaccine boosters, not just boosters, but making sure we get more of the unvaccinated vaccinated, including 5 to 11. Focusing on the budget. Budget for me is due in a few weeks. Next year's budget. I got to get to the printer in the next few weeks, and catching up after a pretty intense period of time with the family, myself, my team, and it's been probably the most productive week I've had since I've been governor.
That's great. Well, You weren't abducted by aliens or had...
No, there were some Twitter accounts that I think we'd all do well taking some time away from social media. That was just a thought. A hell of a thing.
So the California economy, let's talk about that since we're at the California Economic Summit.
Yeah.
How do you think about California's economic strategy, and where are we on the recovery path?
Look, I'm inherently going to be a booster because I'm biased as governor, but I'm also biased as a fifth-generation California. I'm biased, as many of you know, as a small business owner myself that's had the privilege of creating about 1,000 jobs, 21-plus businesses in this state. And I, again, always say this. I'm not saying that to impress any of you, but to impress upon you my passion for entrepreneurialism, economic and workforce development. It's not an intellectual exercise. It's not something I looked at a poll to determine was a priority for you and should be for me. It's been the cause of my life. And it's something to be celebrated, that entrepreneurial spirit, that innovative spirit. And it's alive and well in the state of California. And let me just back that up, because these are things you don't see on One American News and, you know, Fox. California has no peers, continues to have no peers. We are world-beating in terms of our economic growth. In the last 5 years, no other Western democracy has outperformed the state of California. The United States has not. Germany, Japan, the UK, no other Western democracy has outperformed this state in your economic output. 21% GDP over the last 5 years. With all due respect to states like Texas, eat your heart out, a modest 12%. That's California. Once again, and forgive me, guys, but once again, #1 in innovation, #1 in business startups, dominating in every category, fastest growing companies, the most influential companies of the world. Read Fortune, read Time, read those studies. Dominating in terms of economic recovery. No state in America has created more jobs since January than the state of California. 812,000 jobs. We were the tentpole of the American economic recovery. 44% of America's jobs, 44% in August, came out of the state of California. Record-breaking venture capital, 50+%. That's double the next 3 states combined. Better economic performance versus Texas. In the last 18 months, they grew at 1/3 of the rate of the state of California. Better economic and health outcomes than Florida, Texas, Indiana, and the U.S. since the pandemic. It's just remarkable how obsessed some are with trying to trip California up and to identify areas of weakness when we still dominate. #1 in household income, #1 in factory jobs. 13% GDP growth, better than the next 10 manufacturing states in the last 5 years. No state creating more factory jobs than the state of California. #1 in two-way trade, #1 in direct foreign investment. We dominate in exports and imports. 43% of the world's imports coming through the state of California, 31% of the exports. You look across the sector. Look what's happening in aerospace, and look what SpaceX just did, 6.5-acre procurement down there in Long Beach of new facility. Look at the investments that are taking place in Silicon Valley and down in Hollywood, the merger of the two, dominating. Think about it, not just Netflix, Disney Plus. Think about Hulu. Think about Peacock and the investments that have been made in this state and the commitments that Universal is making in the state of California. Look what Skype, or rather Zoom and Stripe and AppFolio have committed in the state. $1 billion investment that Google's making. Those things don't even get headlines because they're table stakes in so many ways. Even that company that left California, left us. There's some company that left California, didn't take one job, in fact, doubled down on investing in more jobs in the state of California. 50% increase in productions coming out of the Tesla facility based on their new commitments. They opened a new factory down in Southern California, about 1,000 new jobs, new R&D investments here in the state of California. Still 35,000 folks that work here. By the way, there's 34 EV manufacturing companies besides Tesla in the state of California, dominating in electric vehicles and green energy. So I honestly, and no BS, I know I lost half of you on this, but it's a point of pride. Every single thing I just said, look it up. Facts. 8.9% per capita annualized household income growth. It's just these things don't exist in other parts of the country and around the rest of the world. That's your state. Number one, in so many categories, yes, we struggle in other areas, and that's what you're all about. But I'm really, really proud of the resiliency of all of you, the resiliency of our business leaders, and the resiliency of 40 million Californians that are responsible for all of those data points that I just advanced.
You know, so you're not really passionate about this or anything.
I love it. Look, I mean, we've said it a million times. There's the American dream and only one other state that attaches itself to the dream. California dream, and it's still alive and well. You know, you've heard me 1,000 times, but it needs to be repeated. And I don't know that I need to repeat it. You saw how many new Nobel laureates came out of the state of California in the last few months. We dominate in engineers and researchers and scientists, dominate in R&D, dominate in R&D. The future still is invented here. 5-to-1 green collar jobs compared to fossil fuel jobs. We're dominating this transition. We're skating where the puck is going. I mean, world-beating state. And so I hope we could stop beating ourselves up. Because, you know, my mom used to say this when I was a kid, you're nothing but a mirror of your consistent thoughts. Whatever you focus on, you'll find more of. That's why everyone's so damn miserable watching Fox. I mean, you have to be miserable and stressed, and the world's coming to an end, and they're going to, you know, take away your textbooks and your guns and, you know, I mean, all this nonsense, this mishigash that is America today. But I hope, you know, we're a bit of an antidote to that. I'm proud of this state. I'm proud of rural California. I'm proud of Republicans, independents, not just Democrats. I'm proud of the people that voted against me in the recall. I'm proud they called California home. I love this state. And I just think we need to start focusing on what's right. We'll address what's wrong. We know issues of affordability. That's the number one issue that connects more problems than any other issue. But also it's notable. Do you know what our poverty rate dropped in 2020? Does anyone focus on, where's the headlines on this? You know, poverty in the state of California went from 16.2 to 12.3%, the supplemental poverty index. There's never been a reduction in poverty like that over a calendar year in the state of California. We got 44,000 people into housing last year. Didn't feel like it, I get that, but that's unprecedented in California history. I signed 30 housing bills this year. We have a $22 billion investment in affordable housing and homelessness, unprecedented in our state's history by multiples. We have strategies, plans, accountability at the local level for the first time, requirement that you have a plan. If you don't actually results, you don't get paid. You know, we're changing the paradigm, and so I just hope we start changing our paradigm of thinking a little bit as well. Because, you know, Lenny and I were talking about this has been a hard year and a half for all of you. And winter is coming. You know, winter is coming. I mean, COVID is not taking the winter off. Ask the folks in Germany, record-breaking numbers today. Ask what just happened. Shut down a week in Russia. The EU, see what's happening. Ask my friend Jared Polis in Colorado. They're less than 10% of their ICU beds right now. What's happening in Vermont, New Hampshire, Minnesota, the Dakotas. The winter is here. It's coming in California as well. And it's hard, but we're getting through it. We'll get through it. But it's going to require all of us, I think, a little bit more discipline of focus, a little less finger pointing, a little less jawing back and forth, a little less focus on the differences. And again, what defines this conference is this bottom-up notion, this regionalization framework, this notion of collaborations and partnerships. And Lenny, I know we should segue, but one of the things I'm really proud of in this budget, which, by the way, $80 billion operating surplus, unprecedented in U.S. history, your budget. I don't know, it used to matter, budget surpluses, but maybe it's not as interesting anymore. $80 billion operating surplus last year. We did the biggest tax rebate in American history, $12 billion, up to $1,100 for families that we just gave back to folks. Highest reserves in our state's history, highest bond rating in 20 years, $11.3 billion we're paying down on pension obligations. Find a state that's using general fund to pay down long-term pension obligations. And by the way, you're going to have good news coming soon on next year's budget surplus as well. That allows us to do things unprecedented in California's history, and that's invest in you. Invest in human infrastructure, not just physical infrastructure. And $600 million in this year's budget was investment quite literally because of you, because you inspired an idea the last time we got together in Fresno, the extraordinary Fresno Drive Collaborative, which inspired many of you in this room and sure inspired me to make a commitment to you that we fulfilled. $600 million that we're putting back in to replicate programs like that, to support your efforts at the local level in 13 key regions in this state, to make sure that our economic recovery is felt by everybody, not just some of us, and to make sure that we're focusing on the divide, particularly that urban-rural divide. And so I'm looking forward to the work you'll be doing over the course of the next number of months as we provide tens of millions of dollars of planning grants and then over $500 million in implementation grants. And we move this agenda forward to galvanize and organize and regionalize an entrepreneurial framework where we can accelerate our transition and accelerate our leadership and dominance economically across the state.
It's terrific. So talked a little bit this morning, and we'll talk again tomorrow about SURF, which you're talking about CERF, which is a big plus to try and get regional economic development done in a collaborative way that's really built on a lot of the principles that California Forward has. So with that money, the federal infrastructure money, hopefully some Build Back Better dollars in the upcoming federal budget, how do we help ensure that that money actually delivers for the people that you're talking about? The rural-urban divide, the issues of historical racism, the lack of opportunity for too many people. What do we need to do to address those topics?
Well, as you know, our mantra, and it was our mantra when I had the privilege of being Lieutenant Governor, co-chairing the first economic summit we had, was growth and inclusion. You can't have an economic development strategy without a workforce development strategy, and you can't have a strategy that's top-down. You can't sell down your vision. That vision, the state vision, has to be realized at the local level. I say it all the time, localism's determinative. But localism defined by a regional framework and recognizing the unique regional characteristics of this state. So often in Sacramento we talk about the aggregate. None of you live in the aggregate. You live somewhere in the state, you do business somewhere in the state. There's strengths and weaknesses that are defined distinctively. That's why our approach to COVID has been bottom up similarly. And our approach to economic and workforce development needs to be defined accordingly. What I love about the Fresno Drive, what I love about happening with the Better Bakersfield efforts and Kern is this framework of partnership, public-public partnership, not just public-private. Partnering with community colleges, our extraordinary public universities, CSU, UCs, developing collaborations, and extending our capacity by connecting more dots. So the key for me in answering that question, we're going to fund success. We want to fund strategies and plans, but we also want to fund leaders and we want to fund doers. At the end of the day, there's just no substitute for doers and entrepreneurial thinking. We want to fund iteration. We want folks that have a mindset of, ready, fire, let's go. I don't want to wait for the perfect. And that's why we jump-started with the $600 million, these regional grants, but we want to keep driving that. You identify the needs, we want to be your partner and develop those needs, and we want to drive more investment from the private sector, not just the public sector as well. Over $40 billion, we're still plus or minus, counting up all the money that came from the $1.2 trillion package that was just approved by Congress. That's a big deal. But I want to put it in perspective. This year we put $4 billion of our budget surplus for electric vehicles in the state. The federal government's Infrastructure plan, unprecedented investment in transforming and transformation, is $384 million over 5 years for electric vehicles. The state put up $4 billion. My point is only saying this: mad respect for the federal government, there's still no substitute for your state. Our state investments are profound and need to maintain in terms of their prominence. And we can't just look to Washington, D.C. to solve all of these problems. But nonetheless, we are at a point of real abundance across the spectrum. Our ability to invest an unprecedented amount of money in infrastructure and in human capital. And we want to do that on the basis of real strategies and regional collaboratives. And so that's how we ultimately advance that cause. And we're trying to do it across the spectrum with the earned income tax credit, expanding child care, all the stuff they're debating in Washington, D.C. right now. All of that's been accomplished in California. Early childhood education, we created a brand new grade this year, TK. It's no longer K through 12, it's TK to 16. We have free community college in California. We significantly expanded child care subsidies for 200,000 new slots. We created child savings accounts. Unprecedented. There's not a state in America that's ever done this. 3.7 million kids are going to get their own savings and checking accounts, which is really amazing, I think. It's kind of cool. And we want to use those accounts not only to create a college-going culture, billions of dollars will be invested in that, but we also want to use it to create a framework around financial literacy, address the issue not just of income, but of wealth divides. And that goes to the issue, Lenny, again, of equity. We've doubled the earned income tax credit. We've extended paid family leave. We've done a lot of the things that are deeply part of our equity agenda. But from an economic development framework, again, regionalization is foundational in terms of advancing that goal.
Okay. One other core element of that economic development is that it not only needs to be vibrant and growing and inclusive and equitable, but also needs to be sustainable and resilient given everything that we see hitting us, from wildfires to mudslides to rising sea levels and things. So how does the state, and how should we be thinking going forward about embedding sustainability and the transition into our plans? So California Forward helped co-sponsor a deliberative poll that I sent you the results of that talked about widespread bipartisan support for climate, more government intervention climate, but want to make sure that it's done in a way that is affordable and helps people who are going to be disadvantaged transition. So how do we think about those things?
I was talking to my staff the other day about our MOU under 2, where we have 235 subnational organizations that have signed up, and we were looking forward after the 6th assessment to going to COP in Glasgow, COP 26, to make an announcement of our new signatories. And my staff went, "What did you just say?" I said, "Well, you know, our MOU under 2, or at least to get 1.5, to hold to 1.5 degrees. They said, "Is that Celsius or Fahrenheit?" I said, "Celsius." I said, "What is Celsius?" MOU, memorandum understanding, under 2. Okay. I mean, the language we use on climate is an abomination. And so we need to start changing language and use human speak. It's about extremes, extreme weather. It's about lifestyles. It's about traditions. Ask the folks in Greenville about traditions and lifestyles. Greenville was wiped off the map. Ask the folks at Grizzly Flats and the Calder Fire about traditions and lifestyles. Their community was wiped off the map. Yesterday we announced the 3rd anniversary and our marking efforts of cleaning up and resiliency up there in the campfire paradise, wiped off the map. That's climate change. Our kids are, their lungs are filled with smoke. We're heating up, we're choking up, we're burning up as a state. My kids are likely, your kids, not my grandkids, not your our kids are likely to live in a world with average temperatures, Fahrenheit, 8 degrees average hotter than they are today. What more damn evidence do you need than your own eyes? You may not believe in climate change, climate science, global warming. You have to believe your own eyes. And so we're the tip of the spear in terms of the consequences of our neglect to decarbonize. We have to be on the leading edge of the solution, and we are. We're the first state in the United States to require all vehicles purchased, new vehicles, by 2035 to be alternative fuel vehicles. You saw the automobile companies catch up to that and mark a commitment to align with California. We're the first oil-producing state in U.S. history to announce a future without oil and actually created a date where we will no longer extract fossil fuels in this state. We just did. I know that's tough on folks. That's why we're putting unprecedented money in real transition dollars and resiliency. It's part of the $600 million we put out for planning grants to accelerate transitions. This state is doing some remarkable things, and I'm really proud of that. But perhaps most significantly this year, we put $15 billion of general fund up to make California more future-proof by focusing on resiliency. $5.2 billion for drought and resiliency, for infrastructure and safe drinking water, and consolidating our smaller community wells and systems. We are investing an unprecedented amount of money, as I noted, in that transition, our infrastructure on electric vehicles. We are putting more investment in forest management, active forest management, vegetation management, reforestation dollars, healthy soils, regenerative ag. It's a really exciting budget. And again, that budget is larger than any other nation's investment that we've ever seen in this space. And I think change the language, continue the investments, and focus on how our economy is strengthened by this transition and not burdened in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. It's obviously premature to talk about what the budget's going to be, but as you're looking into the next year, you still have, when you did the State of the State a couple of years ago, the whole State of the State was on housing and homelessness as a core affordability and human issue facing the state. You know, what are going to be some of the things that we ought to be thinking about as we head into 2022?
Well, I mean, we've got to deal with quality of life. We've got to deal with homelessness. We've got to deal with cleaning the state and the streets, cleaning up our thoroughfares, our underpasses, our overpasses, removing graffiti, dealing with encampments. We put $1.1 billion up for an initiative called Clean California. Caltrans' biggest investment ever was $90 million to clean up thoroughfares. We put $1.1 billion this year. We've identified 100 encampments that are priority encampments, working with local officials as a dynamic list to start working to clean up encampments in a thoughtful and strategic way. We put $3 billion. This is the most significant investment since the infamous 1967 budget. By the way, I just read a wonderful paper about Ronald Reagan, Governor Reagan's 1967 budget, where he infamously and notably began the process of completely crippling our capacity to address the mental health issue by defunding state hospitals and the system. This is the most significant new investment on mental health housing, board and care housing, housing for conservatorships, $3 billion targeted specifically at new slots, new opportunities in that space. We put $6 billion, $5.8 billion for HomeKey. Some of you may know a little bit about HomeKey. We started buying hotels and motels last year. Seemed an opportunistic time to do it in the midst of the pandemic. A lot were vacant. A lot of people were desperate. A lot of small business owners that were very happy that someone was going to come in and purchase those assets. We were able to purchase 6,000 units in 5.5 months, $846 million. That's 6,000 new permanent housing units for previously homeless individuals, which is incredible in 5.5 months. 846 million, 5.8 billion in this year's budget to replicate that program and get it a whole nother scale. I mean, these are exciting investments. We did $10.3 billion just on affordable housing. You're going to have the pro tem and others. She's the best. I mean, 30 housing bills I signed this year. 30. SB 9, good people can disagree, but I'm really proud of the work the legislature did in that space. On ADUs, the work that was done. We put $100+ million on affordable home ownership, $800 million on infill grants, $850 million just to address housing that was going to convert from affordable to market rate to keep it affordable. Comprehensive plan, comprehensive strategy. And we created, and forgive me, I know a lot of you local leaders, and forgive me, but we created a housing accountability unit. Because you know what? Everybody talks a big game, but local government continues to be the biggest impediment to new construction in this state, the NIMBYism. And so the Housing Accountability Unit is going to hold local governments accountable to their housing element, to their RENA goals. For the first time, the state is actually going to monitor that. And know this, we weren't shy. If you're from Huntington Beach, you remember this. We sued you because you weren't even planning for housing at all income levels, let alone developing it. And we identified 46 other cities that we were going to sue, but we were able to work through our differences. We're stepping up our enforcement and our accountability, not just putting up more money. So housing, homelessness, continuing our unprecedented education investments, continuing to reduce the cost of college, continuing to do the kinds of things that they're still debating in Washington, D.C., again, focusing on a just and equitable recovery, and always mindful that the number 1, 2, 3, 4 issue in the state of California in terms of economic growth and recovery is addressing COVID and getting COVID behind it. If I just may end on this. Our time's up. This is hard for me to say because it makes you even more unpopular than I am in many camps. Last year at this time, we all were bemused and confused when we saw a few states starting to see an increase in COVID. It's as if we learned nothing in the last year. The coverage of Colorado, somewhat inexplicable, they say. We really don't know why they're seeing an increase in Vermont and New Hampshire, why the Northeast is experiencing an increase. California is now experiencing an increase. Well, we know why. There's a seasonality to COVID. It's not particularly difficult after a couple of years to understand. You see those trends in Europe. You see those trends extend in other parts of the globe. Unfortunately, that's what's happening here in your state, our state. This time last year, we had just shy of 5,000 cases, a year ago today. In 4 weeks last year, went from 5,000 to 23,000. In 8 weeks, it went to 54,000 cases, like that. We're getting body bags and mobile morgues down in Southern California in a matter of weeks. The positivity rate, I remember it like it was yesterday, December 8th, 2020, I remember it. It broke 10% last year. Positivity rate this year compared to last year, case rates, 3,900, so 4,000 versus 5, within a margin of error. Positivity rates within a margin of error. Already starting to see hospitalizations go back up. ICUs. It's the winter surge. And that's why I cannot impress you more. Get that booster shot. It's safe. It will save your life. Work. I got mine on the 27th. Literally, the flu shot is what I'm still a little sore about. Literally, not figuratively, a little sore about. Not the booster shot. We've got to keep those boosters up, and we've got to be mindful that the job's not done. You can't spike the ball. We have to do. I know you all sitting here with masks on going, why the hell do I still have to have a mask on? For good reason. Not just your own health, but someone else's. We still have a lot of work to do. Last week, we literally were planning out our winter surge strategy, pre-positioning assets in anticipation of what's going to happen in the next few weeks. Making sure we have staffing, not only within the state, but that we have organized potential staffing that we'll have to bring in from out of the state. I don't want to tell you that because I don't want it to be true. But the data bears this out. And you're going to start seeing this all across the Northeast, Midwest, the Dakotas. Seeing it in Minnesota right now. You're going to start seeing it here in California, probably in Oregon and Washington. It's nothing to panic about. It's just something to be mindful of as we continue to do more in vaccinations. And I'll just end on this, and I know I've gone over. Thank you. This has been amazing. your nation-leading efforts in getting vaccinated. 55.6 million doses in the state of California have been administered. 89, this is an actual number. I remember that got it every morning is what I wake up to. Kids crying and vaccination numbers. 89.7%. 90% of all adults have received at least one dose. But we still have work to do. So thank you for everything you've done. We were able to get through the summer with the lowest case rates in America, but we're now 16th lowest in a matter of weeks. Still have work to do. We'll get through the next 7-8 weeks. We'll be stronger on the other side. Our economy will continue to dominate. And mark my words, as I said, eat your heart out, Texas. But Lenny, eat your heart out, Texas, and I'm going to now, a little punctuation, especially Florida. Because California continues to dominate in every category. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for all your incredible work. I'm really proud of you. And thank you for the privilege of this conversation. Thank you all. Thanks, sir.
Thanks for making that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lenny. All right, so as promised, lunch and